Awesome. Thank you so much. So first of all, thank you so much, Neil, for inviting me. This is a real privilege. As some of you may know, I was a teacher in Spokane and lived there for 6 years from 2009 to 2015. And it's certainly a place that we still really regard as one of our homes, really, in our stops along in life. I'm the Director of Education for the Holocaust Center for Humanity. I started with them in 2019. And again, just to be here today, right basically in the same, the time of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, where so many organizations are having meaningful observances across the country and the world, and to participate here in the Spokane Jewish Cultural Film Festival is a privilege, so I thank you. I'm going to share screen a second here, if you don't mind here, because I'd like to show a couple things, but it looks like I need screen sharing power.
It's coming in just a sec.
No problem.
All right, you should be good.
Yep, I see it. Okay, great. Let me pull it up. Okay, so hopefully you see our screen there, I assume and hope. And I'll pull this over. All right, fantastic. Thank you. And I'll go full screen. All right, beautiful. Okay, so I will make this as relatively brisk as I can here, but I'd love to just tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do for those that don't know us, and then talking about the work that we do, and hopefully you'll see how it sort of cascades into a few things I'd like to say leading into the film Charlotta, as well as some questions for you to consider while you're watching it. So since 1989, the Holocaust Center has taught the history of the Holocaust so that our local survivors, their families, and millions of other victims will not be forgotten, and their stories would inspire positive action. The Holocaust Center endeavors to build courageous communities by teaching and honoring the history, stories, and lessons of the Holocaust. These lessons give people of all ages an empathetic lens to view today's complex issues and see the role they each can play in combating hatred. This sort of diagram here indicates just some of the main ways that we attempt to do so. So some of you may know that in 2019, there was a Holocaust education law that was passed statewide, which currently, quote unquote, strongly encourages teaching the lessons of the Holocaust. And so we, the Holocaust Center, were kind of contracted by OSPI, the State Department of Education, to kind of be the creators and purveyors of best practices Holocaust education statewide. I first learned of the Holocaust Center when I moved into Washington, literally in Spokane, and I had been teaching in Chicago, and I knew the power. I had already seen the power of Holocaust education. So I was like, oh my gosh, are there survivors that I can find to come and speak to my students here to really deepen the lessons? And that's how I learned of what the Holocaust Center is and was. And so that started my relationship with them from the outside before I became part of it. And so not only do we have a speakers bureau, which obviously, sadly, we have fewer and fewer survivors per se, but we work meaningfully with what we call legacy speakers, which are children and even grandchildren of survivors, liberators, and even rescuers, to go out in person and virtually to convey these lessons and share their stories, which I'm really going to emphasize here, with students in classrooms statewide. We also field trips, also in person and virtual, but so you can see there's an array of different things. I'm not going to spend much time on this at all, but just sort of a nice segue here is what I was referring to, this concept of professional development and our online resources. Once we came aboard, right, because I knew as a teacher, I mean, there's lots of kind of do's and don'ts about teaching effective quality Holocaust education. We want to avoid simulations. We want to focus on accurate history. We want to make sure that we're providing context before someone's going to go in and start reading Knight or Maus or what have you. They really need to be grounded in the appropriate, accurate historical context so that students not only understand what they're going to read or see in the places in the full scope of what was occurring, so that they can better understand these considerations of what they're going to see. But in addition, really importantly, they're grounded in the why. Students will always ask questions about, why are we learning this stuff? And so it's really important to establish that right from the beginning, and that relevance piece, that how Holocaust education, if nothing else, can and should be used as a scaffold into all that which has succeeded it in terms of what we see around us today, and not merely genocide. And so lots of people who tend to look at Holocaust education as, oh yeah, wasn't that something that happened to so many Jewish people a long time ago, and having to do with anti-Semitism. Yes, those things are true, but that's only a small part of it, because it's these lessons that we use to try to connect in and show how first of all, that we model and try to confront hatred, racism, prejudice, etc., in all their forms. Obviously, included within that is confronting anti-Semitism, which apparently who knows? It's the longest hatred for sure, and it's unbelievable how it continues to be so prevalent in our society today. So the short thing is here. So these are kind of like the 11 guidelines that we begin our sort of foundational presentations to teachers who are learning about teaching about the Holocaust, or are looking to, like, how should I be doing this right? You know, what are these sort of moves? And the one that I want to emphasize today, although all 11 of them are super important, is the one that I've put in bigger letters and in sort of yellowish or orange. Translate statistics into people. So what does that mean? Translating statistics into people. So I saw on the list of the film festival that you have here that there is another film, a documentary, I think, called Round Numbers. And no student, no person can empathize with a number like 6 million, or 800,000 murdered in Treblinka, or 2 million murdered in the Holocaust by bullets, as they say, east sort of the Bug River in Poland. People can't empathize with that. That's a figure that's almost incomprehensible. It's a stunning number. It's shocking. It should be. But with students, right, no real, true, genuine learning is going to occur if we don't make connections. And so the importance in Holocaust education and everything that we do is to try to convey what we call the human story, to humanize it through in various ways. And so what I'd like to do here is I'm going to show you a very short film excerpt, and you'll see there's a question at the bottom of the screen, and obviously I probably can't really hear you, but I can pretty much guess, I think, what your answers will be once you see this, okay? But this is something we commonly use and highly recommend as part of the build-up before a teacher will ever even open up the book, whatever text they're going to read, or whatever history lessons, where we want to establish context. And this is one of the preeminent things that we do. And so without further ado, I'm going to share with you this short video clip. And as you see in the question, as you watch, I'd love for you to consider, sort of put on your student hat and think about, what might be my teacher's reason for this? Why does he think that I should be watching this? Why is he taking up class time? So here it is.
The work at school is finished. The days are sunny and warm. Our schoolmates dream about green fields, about the cheerful camp life. Never did life possess such joy and freedom from care.
It seems one does everything but pray. The girls talk and look down at the boys, and the boys talk and look up at the girls. This is what the entire thing consists of.
Hated porridge. No matter how much butter and sugar was added, I couldn't stand the look of the gluey mass. We had a Hanukkah play. I was one of the candles, supposedly of a menorah, and we all had a verse that we had to recite in Hebrew, and it was a very exciting thing to me.
My mother was meticulous about keeping kosher and prayed 3 times a day. even though she was a modern woman who read literature and spoke several languages.
I frequently imagine myself as a great ice skating dancer performing for large audiences.
When I went to show, I made sure not to miss even one single word. This is how precious the Hebrew words were to me.
Spring, warm and gentle, brings a beautiful holiday of freedom, Passover. I have the job of cleaning our windows for the holiday.
In my dreams, I am a great poet, beautiful, talented, and very famous. My poems open the secret heart of the world, and its embrace carries me far away. With eyes closed, I lie for hours and daydream. Life is a mystery to me, a beautiful, secret mystery.
Okay, so that short film, oops, I don't know where that's coming from, sorry. That short film appears as part of a lesson that we've devised called, it has to do with pre-war Jewish life. And invariably, the moment that, whether we're doing this presentation in person or by Zoom, we'll ask people to type into chat or raise their hand. Immediately people are typing in or raising their hand and they're like, they're just like us. They're just, they laugh. Boys are just as goofy then as they are now. All these different things, but they see, oh my gosh, they're just like us. So see in one fell swoop the importance of what is achieved. And I realize you're seeing this in sort of excerpt from the way that the lesson builds up to this moment. But teachers see right away the power of this because they understand what empathy means. They can't get kids into the text to start to care about an Anne Frank or an Elie Wiesel or whatever if they don't first break down the barriers of, as I often saw, whether I was teaching in Chicago, Buffalo, Spokane, or the Kent School District, most kids I ever encountered didn't, what is a Jew? Who are Jews? What is Judaism? What do Jews look like? Where are they from? Also, in other words, other, right? This sort of thing that they don't even know of. Some might have some preconceptions. Hardly ever did I ever come across in my years of teaching students who even knew that Jesus was Jewish. So there's a lot of like buildup that needs to be done that I think maybe the older we get, if you're like close to my age, you sort of would have taken these things for granted unless you see it up close and personal. But in one fell swoop, getting kids to like from who are they, what is that, into sort of like, they're just like us. Now, the lesson doesn't end there because real importantly, we want to also talk about, but what differences do you see as well? And that's where kids will say, well, I noticed that some people seem to be dressed very sort of in black clothing and long beards and, different types of, hair and things like that, but others didn't. And they'll appreciate that because each student, each person wants to be seen for the fullness of themselves with their own unique differences, cultural celebrations or not, whatever, right? And so we've really now made a connection between people. It went from 6 million into people just like us, but also different like us too. So, and now learning can begin when we sort of intentionally help to create some of these bridges that we need. So among these ways that we strive to, gotta move this along. Okay, among these additional ways that we try to make sure that we establish empathy, here are a few, okay? So I just talked about how we make sure that we introduce what, life, Jewish life in Europe before the war. Why? Because we don't want students to learn about Jews only as defined starting in 1933 by Hitler and the Nazis as a victimized, persecuted group. Jewish people had been living for centuries in Europe, right? So we want to really make sure we introduce that part. Here, maybe some of you recognize the wonderful Carla Pepperzak, who is Spokane's finest as far as I'm concerned, and that's truly awesome that the school is named after her. I'm so happy about that. So this is another way that we strive to create empathy and translating statistics into people, that human story, pre-war Jewish life, from other into self, speakers, individual stories. No matter how great I hoped or aspired my lessons would be when I was teaching students about the Holocaust in classrooms, nothing ever rivaled the power and the impact that them meeting and learning and hearing a survivor or a legacy speaker present the story. It made connections and it broke down walls. It really was amazing. Then we're always endeavoring to make sure we're also teaching, again, what is Judaism? The first great, the first monotheists, right, and persecuted because of that. The long-standing nature of anti-Semitism. So what is it, and how long has it existed, and how has it appeared in its myriad awful forms? And then as well, Jewish life in America, to make sure that we understand there's the vibrancy and the diversity of life here in America. Of course, on the right here, then you see incredible arrays of literature. That's one of the most wonderful things, being an educator who has taught about the Holocaust in my classes. Nothing ever captivated my students more than reading and learning these stories, because they spoke to them, regardless of where they were from in the world, what their background was. They helped teach me, as a son of two European people myself, they helped teach me that anyone who has ever felt or been othered or looked down upon, prejudged, etc., immediately connects with these stories and it captivates them. And because Holocaust literature is so incredibly differentiated, meaning there's so many wonderful texts, from graphic novels to texts that are really ripe and ready for upper elementary, and then obviously through high school and beyond. There's so many different ways that you can reach the students. And then we have the incredible story that you're about to see here today. This is another incredible way to translate statistics into human stories, which is when you get the opportunity to get your hands on a real special film. And this was the first time that I had seen this film, Charlotta, and I really have to admit my ignorance that I really didn't know much about Charlotta Solomon before. I think I had heard her name, but oh boy, have I ever went out and bought a couple of books and some of her artwork as a result of me having prepared for this little presentation here. So it's an incredible story, and among the many things that you will see when you watch this film, I'm making sure I'm not giving any spoilers here, is something that comes up that might not be obvious to some unless you're sort of versed in, what is Holocaust education, and that is how art can be used as resistance. So what you'll see here, Charlotta was not, when she was doing her art, she was already, like so many other Jews across occupied Europe, Nazi-occupied Europe, was already suffering from oppression, the being uprooted from your home, moving the family, hiding. Where can you go? What is safe? Not knowing that, like Anne Frank's family, right, who left Germany and went into the Netherlands thinking, okay, we're safe now, we're out of Germany. But nobody knew how, as the war would progress and more countries became occupied, that they too would soon face increasing persecution, and from the Nazis' perspective, a bigger problem that they apparently needed to now figure out how they were going to address, because they did not have this idea of genocide at the beginning. It was something that unfortunately and tragically occurred as a result of numerous actions and inactions, and from an individual, institutional, and national scope and perspective. But resistance is incredible. Spiritual resistance during the Holocaust refers to attempts by individuals to maintain their humanity, personal integrity, dignity, and sense of civilization in the face of Nazi attempts to dehumanize and degrade them. Some examples include culture, education, music, writing, religious observance, and creating cultural record. What you see on the right there is sort of quite famous, the Oneg Shabbat archive, Emanuel Ringelblum, and some others in the Warsaw Ghetto, in the face of the writing on the wall and not knowing the ultimate fate, but sensing a tragic fate. They attempted to preserve letters, artifacts, art, photographs, to try to preserve the culture, right? And then, of course, there are others, such as what you see in the slide, with music, and you see that wonderful quote by Shoshana Kalish, and the incredibly powerful, as we know from Anne Frank and others, the writing. And Anne Frank wasn't the only unbelievable teenage diarist. This young man here, Yitzhak Rudashevsky, who you can read more about in a text called Salvaged Pages by Alexandra Zapruder, was one of the most amazing writers. And I love that quote there, because it really shows what you will similarly see unstated and then stated at times towards the end by Charlotte Solomon about why she's doing what she's doing, that necessity, knowing that the future was appearing less and less bright as time was going on. And so what we do then here, so I framed a couple of questions for you on the right side there that I think are thought-provoking questions, hopefully, especially the second and third. The first one, I have to admit, is kind of a selfish question, because me being in the field of what I do, when I was watching this film, I was trying to think about, what age or what school age, what school grades could students watch this film? Is it appropriate for school age? And so I'd love your thoughts about it. I sort of have my thoughts. There's a couple things that occur that are like, that probably takes it out of this grade level, but I'm really interested in your thoughts there. You're going to see some beautiful art. The animation is incredible. The acting for the animation is amazing. I was really riveted from beginning to end, because it really shows the fullness and scope of life, and that positive resistance, right, against oppression. And that's going to be something you're going to see. There are choices that are made. There are not everybody could or did stand up and resist in any form. Some made other choices or were unable to choose for different reasons. And so it's interesting to watch the effects of persecution and oppression on the different characters and people in the family and in the life of Charlotte Solomon that you'll see. So last but not least, here on the left here, fighting, this is what we do. We try to fight hatred through education. We are not activist per se. Our activism is to educate. And so the best thing that we can try to do at the center is continue to try to educate in the face of anti-Semitism and all. And so we will be starting a series starting February 7th, teaching about Jews and Judaism, religion, history, and identity. This will be 3 one-hour sessions, one in February, one in March, and one in April. If you click that or take a photo of that scan code there, you can register for one or all 3 if they interest you, because they're open not just to educators, and they're all free. So without further ado, I think I'll leave it there. I'd love for you to consider these questions, not only the one about the age appropriateness, but how does learning about Charlotte Solomon and her family contribute to your understanding of the Holocaust and of what it means to resist oppression? And finally, what do you learn about choices, or often, as we say, choiceless choices, with which individuals were confronted during the era of the Holocaust? So that sort of concludes my introductory remarks. I hope it wasn't too long, Neil, but I tried to frame it in a way that hopefully makes sense for some people.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your thoughts.
You're so welcome. I look forward to hearing how it all goes, and thank you again for inviting me, and I look forward to meeting you in person sometime.
Yes, indeed. All right, take care. Thank you so much.
Take care.